The following audiobook is a fan unofficial reading. Danganronpa, Danganronpa Zero, and all other trademarks are owned by Kazutaka Kodaka, Sakaisha, Spike Chunsoft, and Abstraction. Please support the official release. Danganronpa Zero. Written by Kazutaka Kodaka. Read by Frank and Resident Babe. Chapter 1. Junko Enoshima despaired. Everything turned out just the way she expected. Everything turned out just the way she hoped. And so she despaired.
Huh? Is it really that easy?
Magma-like heat boiled up deep inside her stomach, gradually swelled inside her body, and exploded when it reached her chest. The explosion escaped her heart and reached every muscle in her body, bringing her to a complete standstill. The sound of splashing water came from the muddy pool she stood in, as droplets of water danced through the air. On closer examination, one could notice the water was red. As soon as her body stopped moving, the red droplets of water came raining down, making grotesque patterns on her clothes and skin. Her clothes, painted deep red with blood. Her skin, painted deep red with blood. Her face, painted deep red with blood. Nevertheless, none of this caught her attention. Instead, she started tapping her foot impatiently. It was a magnificent tap. She put every bit of strength, body and soul she had into it. Her entire existence. And then, after tapping for a while, Junko Enoshima let out an annoyed yell, as fierce as the roar of a feverish, rampaging beast.
But that's not enough.
Her scream echoed through her surroundings, the noise pouring down as if it was a rock shattering into pieces. But she wasn't done. She continued to scream.
More. I need even better despair-inducing despair.
She continued tapping her foot intensely. Despair-inducing despair. That was what she was after. She wanted not only for the world to despair, but also for despair worthy of her own self.
More. Despair-inducing despair.
She stopped mid-thought. Something clicked inside her head and she stopped moving. Her face froze in a surprised expression, and she stood petrified, as if every muscle in her crimson-painted body stopped working. Then she let out a weak whisper.
Oh, I see.
A series of gears and switches began moving deep inside her skull, sparking pitch-black thoughts. A certain object floated up inside her mind. A face. It was a face she knew, of course. The face of a fellow student at Hope's Peak Academy. Her body shivered as she started laughing. The shiver gradually spread to her entire body, and then she started tapping her foot again. This time her tapping resembled a dance. She tapped her foot like a girl who couldn't help feeling joyous. A girl who couldn't help having fun.
Oh, it's so wonderful. So wonderful.
And as the face of the person destined to bring her so much wonderful despair kept floating in her mind, her heart overflowing with a strange feeling that almost felt like love, Junko Enoshima danced to the rhythm of despair.
Oh, it's going to be so magnificent. This despair.
Laughing ecstatically, ultimate despair, Junko Enoshima continued dancing. She danced as if she was losing her mind. That was the beginning. The beginning of a story that ends in despair. Chapter 2. Hope's Peak Private Academy, an exclusive, government-sanctioned school accepting only students with exceptional abilities. Its stated goal is to raise the future hope of the nation, and for that reason, it became known as the Academy of Hope. It's a source of envy, as it's common knowledge that one can gain great success in life just by being a Hope's Peak graduate. Certainly, many Hope's Peak graduates are now employed in high positions in every field of the professional world, so that statement's not an exaggeration. There are two requirements to becoming a Hope's Peak student. One must be currently enrolled in a high school, One must super excel at their field of expertise. Hope's Peak doesn't hold any standard entrance exams, as the Academy insists that the things tested by those kind of exams are meaningless for its purposes. Instead, students are scouted for by the Academy staff, who serve as both educators and researchers of extraordinary human ability. Some say Hope's Peak Academy's faculty members are much like parents, who made it their life's mission to find talent and nurture it in their children. Right now, every member of that extravagant facility, as well as the Academy itself, is facing an unprecedented, unparalleled crisis. Hope's Peak Academy's faculty building is located in the Academy's eastern quarter. It's the only building on campus students are forbidden to enter. The corridors of that building, usually busy with staff members going back and forth, were now empty and engulfed in an unnatural silence. The laboratories, the private rooms, and the luxurious personal offices had all been abandoned. Every man and woman who usually occupies these locations were currently gathered in a single place. Meeting Room 13. Hope's Peak Academy's largest meeting room is located on the top floor of the faculty building, and has a maximum capacity of over 300. Nevertheless, with every single faculty member attending, it was fully packed. Not a single empty seat remained next to the long tables lined across the room. But, for such a huge crowd, the room was relatively quiet. Only a single person's voice could be heard. The voice of Hope's Peak Academy's headmaster, Jin Kirigiri. He faced the assembled faculty members from his position at the foremost table, and read from a printout he held in his hand. He spoke in an unaffected tone of voice, a blank expression on his face. The words printed on the paper came out of his mouth as if he was nothing more than an automaton reading them out. As far as Kirigiri was concerned, that was his most important duty. It didn't matter how out of the ordinary the subject on hand was. No, he didn't have any time to waste faced with the current state of confusion and unanswered questions. If they had time, then there are much more important things they should have been doing. A voice suddenly rose from the crowd. "Were you saying we're just going to cover it up?" Kirigiri raised his head and saw 300 people staring at him intently, waiting for a response. It wasn't a piercing stare. It was much more uncomfortable than that. 300 people stared at him as if they were one entity, and Kirigiri felt every hair on his body tingling. He turned his head towards the 4 people sitting to his right, trying to escape the stare. They were stationed at the same frontmost table he was, their faces unusually wrinkled. Their eyes were closed, making those wrinkly faces even wrinklier. From Kirigiri's position, it almost looked like the 4 faces in front of him was one huge, giant wrinkle. The 4 members of Hope's Peak Academy's steering committee looked as if they were about to give up. An unintentional bitter smile appeared on Kirigiri's face. So that's how it's going to be. Oh well, it's not as if I expected anything else. With those feelings festering inside his heart, Kirigiri turned back towards the crowd's stare. He put the paper aside. He was going to use his own words from now on. "Let me make it perfectly clear," he emphasized. "We reached this decision after putting a lot of thought into the matter at the Hope's Peak Academy steering meeting that took place earlier today." He felt the temperature in the room turning tepid. It was probably because every faculty member's body had grown stiff in attention. Kirigiri slipped from the cup in his hand and continued. "We understand, of course, how extremely irregular this decision is." The wrinkly faces that were as much a part of the "we" he talked about as he was did not move an inch. It was as if they knew from the very beginning he was going to take the situation into his own hands. "Make no mistake, we're not covering this incident up to escape responsibility. If I could end it all here and now by simply taking responsibility, I'd do so in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, this particular incident cannot be dealt with that easily. It doesn't even matter if each and every one of us takes responsibility. We're dealing with a problem that exists in an entirely different dimension." Kirigiri stopped for a moment and finished his glass of water in a single gulp, trying to remain calm. "Don't get me wrong, I don't think we're completely blameless here. If we were, that parade out there would not be taking place right now." Kirigiri pointed a finger at the curtained window. Several people turned to look at it, a severe expression in their faces. "That parade has been growing larger and larger lately. The people in it think we're all despicable. Their opinions not completely unfounded." Kirigiri paused and moved his gaze across the room, looking at each of the faculty members' faces, as if what he was about to say was personally directed at them, individually. Nevertheless, I refuse to believe Hope's Peak Academy's thesis that talent itself is humanity's first and foremost hope is wrong. You must realize that if information about this incident leaves the walls of this school, we're likely to lose it all. As far as I'm concerned, that'd be a gigantic loss for the human race. Every one of our successful graduates I've spoken to feels the same way. At the mention of Hope's Peak's graduates, the crowd stirred a little. That's the reason I and the members of Hope's Peak Academy's steering committee reached our decision. We concluded that this incident shouldn't be made public after all. He took a peek at the old men, but they remained still. Their blank expression made it look as if what was going on didn't concern them. As I said before, I know more than anyone how irregular this decision is. Nevertheless, we have a duty, both as educators and as scientists. The duty to protect talent. Should human talent become the target of public hostility, it would be a great tragedy. Furthermore, there's one thing I want you all to remember. The 300 faculty members waited in attention for Kirigiri's next words. The crimes committed may be terrible, but it doesn't change the fact that that student carries a very special brand of hope, we raised all on our own. The colour of the faculty's eyes changed in an instant. They didn't stir anymore. Everyone sat in complete silence. No one objected. No one could object. His words were narrow-minded, but they reflected the opinions of everyone in the room. They were all acting both as educators and as scientists, researching human talent. And just like any other scientists becoming obsessed with their area of research, the staff of Hope's Peak Academy were obsessed with talent. Anyone who didn't share that obsession did not belong. That's why they listened to Kirigiri's words and made their decision. They had to protect their thesis. They had to protect the future they believed in. They had to protect the hope they believed in. And so, they do their best to cover up the worst incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history. Chapter 3.
A yellow cat peeked out from the thicket to the side of the pavement. It slowly stepped out of the swaying grass and into the road, waving its long tail as it turned its eyes in anticipation towards me. But its expression soon turned to alertness and then to fear. The cat, having seen me skipping merrily down the road towards it, must have thought I was about to trample it. It escaped back into the bushes in panic. But I didn't care at all. I bathed in the light of the hot sun, let the wind flutter my skirt, and continued my obscene merry skip onward down the road. I was in Hope's Peak Academy's eastern quarter near the courtyard. Many newly built facilities were lined up around me, as well as several that were still under construction. As I skipped down the road that twisted between them, I took no special notice of any dirty cats or of my classmates studying and fraternizing all around. Nor did I derive any happiness from the light touch of the sun after a long day indoors. No, I skipped down the road with nothing but my destination on mind. Not that I'm the kind of girl who'd go skipping around thoughtlessly. I had a reason. I'm going to meet the boy I like the best in the world. That said, my reason may have been a good one, but no student in their right mind should go skipping down the road in a campus of a school of as high a pedigree as Hope's Peak Academy. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that other students who happened to walk by looked at me oddly. But that really had nothing to do with me. Nothing in the world could stop my skipping. Not a crying girl, not a couple fighting, not a student in a wheelchair that has come to a standstill, not even an anemic student who had fallen down. One thought alone moved my body. I want to meet him. I love him so much. I skipped so obscenely that no one would probably find it surprising if I suddenly sprouted wings and flew up towards the sky. I continued down the road, but... I suddenly came to a stop. Which way should I go? I looked around in confusion and realized I didn't recognize any of the landmarks around me. My heart started beating loudly. No, everything's fine. I calmed myself down and removed a notebook from the backpack I was wearing. On the back page of the notebook, the following sentence was written. You're looking for the neurology lab on the 3rd floor of the biology building in Hope's Peak Academy's eastern quarter. I felt a refreshing wind of relief passing through my body. Yeah, that's right, the biology building. But where is the biology building anyway? My heart went noisy once more. Everything's fine. No need to worry. I nervously flipped through the notebook as if acting on instinct, and my eyes stopped on a page with a crude drawing of a map. Above it, the following was written. This is a diagram of Hope's Peak Academy's eastern quarter. Well done, me. Without thinking, I struck a victory pose. Soon, I was standing on the raised edge of the fountain that decorated the center of the courtyard, comparing the buildings around me with the map. Literature building, science building, physics building, art building, math building, PE building, linguistics building, staff building. As cold droplets from the fountain kept hitting my thighs, I looked for my destination, the biology building, as if I've never visited it before. Ah, it's right over there. I finally found the square building, identifiable by its light green walls. It looked exactly like the note about the biology building in my notebook. Right. I jumped down from the fountain's edge and started running. Some boys in the area looked at me in surprise. Maybe my skirt flew up for a second during my vigorous leap, but that really had nothing to do with me. Anyway, I must reach my destination before I forget. My ferocious dash led me inside the biology building, where I soon discovered a flight of stairs at the back of the lobby. I didn't lose momentum for even a second as I ran up the stairs to the third floor. When I reached it, I ran down the corridor, checking the signs next to the doors lined on its walls. Finally, at the very end, I found the sign that read Neurology Lab. I hastily stopped in my tracks. After a quick deep breath, I checked my hair and my smile in a hand mirror. Yep, cute as always. Flashing that same wonderful smile and shouting, "Good day!" in my brightest voice, I opened the lab's door, and that's when it happened. Something flew just past my ear, making a wing-cutting whooshing sound. Eek! I turned my head in panic and saw a small blade embedded in the wall behind me, still vibrating from the impact. I jumped back. "Why is there a scalpel flying through the air?" I screeched.
Don't shout.
A chiding voice answered back from inside the lab. The moment I heard that voice, my heart started beating faster. Thump, thump went my heart as I turned to look inside the lab. A boy was lying on top of a bed installed in the center of the room.
You're late. That's unseemly for someone as ugly as you.
A dirty white shirt was sloppily thrown over his body. He was lying face up, his face concentrated on a thick manga magazine he held in his hand. He didn't look at me once.
You're also too loud for someone as ugly as you. Speaking of, someone as ugly as you being scared of flying scalpels is weird too.
Wait a second. I stopped him, my voice showing signs of panic. I could report you for discrimination if you keep calling me ugly, you know.
Who are you going to report me to? The National Japanese Ugly People Association? That kind of organization would be guilty of discrimination just by existing.
The manga-reading boy who kept calling me ugly was the person in charge of this neurology lab. The doctor in charge of my treatment. My childhood friend. The boy I like most in the world. He's ultimate neurologist. Yasuke Matsuda, I think.
Oh, I see. You're a member of that association, aren't you? Is that why you're so angry?
I'm not even ugly.
On second thought, you're right. You aren't ugly.
My chest swelled in pride, and I flashed a complacent smile. Yep, that's right. I even checked in my mirror just now, and...
You're super ugly.
Super ugly? My shock was considerable, but it didn't take me long to recover enough to come up with a sharp response. Liar! I'm not super ugly. If anything, I'm world-class cute. Matsuda-kun continued to ignore the fuss I was making, his eyes never leaving the magazine.
I don't care what the world thinks. Ugliness is subjective, and I'm free to make my own judgment,
he said, as if the matter at hand didn't concern him at all. So tell me where you think I'm ugly. I'll go fix it up in surgery, I said in desperation. Is it my eyes? My nose? Maybe my mouth? How about my eyebrows?
You forgot to mention your heart.
But I can't fix my heart in surgery.
Is that so? Poor you. Honestly, you're beyond help. Both your face and your brain aren't any good. I think you can have some success if you make yourself an object of sympathy, though. Go stand in front of a train station and beg for change or something. I'm sure you'll make lots of money.
I dropped my shoulders, crestfallen. Then I let my hands drop towards the floor and my body droop limply. I was beaten up.
By the way, who are you?
Eh? I raised my head in surprise at his unexpected question.
I can't really tell just by the voice.
Are you saying you didn't know who you were talking to until now?
It's your fault. You never told me who you were.
I didn't... But you can recognize me by my look, can't you? See? It's me!
I don't have time to look at you,
said Matsuda-kun, still absorbed in his book.
I just got to the interesting part.
Don't have time? Isn't that just a manga magazine?
So what? If you're gonna ask, what's more important, me or the manga? The answer's the same as always. It's the manga.
I see. If the answer's the same as always, that means manga was always more important to you than me. That's cruel. I didn't want to know that.
That's a fine observation, but please just answer the question.
Okay. Pressured, I took the notebook out of my backpack once more and observed its front cover. Ryoko Otonashi's Memory Notebook. As soon as I saw that title, I remembered. I remembered my own name. It seems my name is Ryoko Otonashi?
I know only one person stupid enough to not be sure of her own name.
Matsuda-kun let out a big sigh.
So you weren't someone suspicious after all.
Are you trying to say you threw that scalpel earlier because you mistook me for someone suspicious or something?
Exactly. I'm not the kind of person who throws sharp objects at acquaintances after all.
Liar! I pointed my index finger straight at Matsuda-kun. I mean, before you confirm who I am, you told me I was late and that I was too loud for an ugly person. That's proof you knew who I was. Smack! Matsuda-kun loudly snapped his manga magazine shut. He leveraged the bed's cushion to jump up out of it, and walked briskly towards me until there was almost no distance between us. What? Why? He looked straight into my eyes. My body grew hotter by the second.
You remember that?
Huh? Matsuda-kun clutched my shoulders strongly with both hands. He pushed his face close to me.
Do you remember me calling you ugly when you got here?
He asked slowly. Seeing Matsuda-kun pressing so close to me with such a serious expression on his face made my heartbeat increase tenfold. I think so. I guess my condition's a little better today. Just as the tone of my voice started warming up, he released his hold on my shoulders and turned around to face away from me. Then, still looking away, he whispered as if talking to himself.
Is your condition really better, or is it worse?
What do you mean?
It's nothing.
Matsuda-kun shook his head and began speaking in a commanding tone.
Go lie in the bed. We have to begin today's treatment.
With my mind still reverberating with the beats of my heart, I removed my backpack and set it aside. Then, I lay down on the bed occupied by Matsuda-kun until just a few minutes ago. As I let my body soak into the soft mat, my nose was filled with the scent of the sheets. Matsuda-kun's scent. I sniffed his scent as I felt the remains of his body warmth engulf my body, and felt as happy as if he were laying next to me, hugging me softly. I laughed an instinctive happy laugh.
Something funny?
Matsuda-kun grimaced and gave me a hard look.
I realize that's the way dung beetles laugh, but even though you are one, it's just too gross. Can't you at least try to laugh normally?
Ew!
What's normal about that? That's even grosser.
Shocked, Matsuda-kun rolled a trolley noisily from the center of the lab. On top of it were several complicated, important-looking machines. He pushed the trolley up to the bed, said,
Here we go.
And started operating one of the machines with a tense expression on his face. I found myself staring at him work. Silky soft hair. Long almond eyes peeking through it. Long feminine eyelashes. A pointed jaw, small pale lips, long white fingers,
Stop looking at me, ugly. It's creepy.
and a sharp tongue. That's right. That's my Matsuda-kun. I rolled to my side and wrote in my notebook.
You don't have to write everything down, dung beetle.
But if I don't write it down, I'd forget it all. Matsuda-kun let out an exaggerated sigh.
Honestly, your brain's like a bottomless bucket.
A bottomless bucket. It wasn't another one of his cruel jokes. It was true. I forget everything I see and hear after a very short time. I don't know the reason. If I ever knew, I've forgotten it. But whatever the reason may be, my forgetfulness is not normal. Of that I'm certain. But it's not like I'm forgetting things because I want to. There's a sickness in my brain, right? I can't help it, so be nice to me.
No, I don't think we can call it a sickness and be done with it.
Matsuda-kun shook his head lightly.
Human memory's a complicated thing, and there's much we don't know about it. It's still very much a black box. Your situation isn't just a simple sickness that can be dealt with like any other. There's a part of the human memory we call episodic memory. It stores your personal experiences, what you see and hear. The area of the brain responsible for it is called the hippocampus. If something goes wrong there, the brain experiences difficulties in creating and storing new episodes. There's a famous old example about a patient who had the hippocampus removed in surgery and lost all ability to form new memories. After that happened, there's been much research done about the exact role of the hippocampus in relation to memory. That said, even if your hippocampus is malfunctioning, you won't lose your ability to remember or learn procedural memory tasks, such as riding a bicycle or using tools. You won't remember the episodes related to those tasks, though. For example, you may remember how to ride a bicycle, but you won't remember how you came to be able to ride them. That's it in a nutshell.
I see. So that's why, even though I'm very forgetful, I still know how to read and write in my notebook. I held the notebook in question with both of my hands and nodded thoughtfully. Ryoko Otonashi's memory notebook. That notebook was memory itself for me. My one and only indispensable trusted item. As long as I have it, I can probably live a regular life, much like regular people. That said, it seems that this school is a little late in accommodating the memory challenge, and that I'm still facing many difficulties on that front. For example, during exams, it's forbidden to look in notebooks, which caused my grades to plummet and got me suspended from... What? I've been suspended from school? I yelled, looking up from the notebook. Just because my grades are bad? That's not fair.
You should be glad they haven't kicked you out completely. I had to negotiate with the school to make that happen.
You stood up for me? My heart skipped a beat. I'm so happy. You really are fond of me, aren't you? Matsuda-kun snorted.
I just need you here as a research subject.
Nevertheless, Matsuda-kun went out and helped me, and that's good enough.
Your case seems to involve a failure in the retrieval of long-term memory. I think something went wrong with the synapses connecting the neurons somewhere in your brain, but I need more time to investigate the problem more thoroughly before I can really understand what's going on.
I didn't understand most of what you said, but at least I haven't been expelled. If I get expelled now, where would I even go? I don't have anywhere to go outside this school. I've forgotten everything else. I don't even remember my family or any old friends I may or may not have. If I get expelled, I will also end up away from you, Matsuda-kun. Being separated from Matsuda-kun was the thing I feared the most. My body shivered a little just speaking the words out loud.
You shouldn't worry too much.
Matsuda-kun turned to face me and spoke bluntly.
You're a valuable research subject and I don't plan to lose you. At least not at the moment.
But you might change your mind later. I'm happy, but I have to remember not to be too much of a burden from now on.
Don't complain. You should be honored that you're participating in such important research.
Matsuda-kun chided me, and then continued his explanation.
In order to understand why memory loss occurs, we need to understand the core elements of our brain's memory storage apparatus. Once we make advances in that field, it opens the doors to a wide array of possibilities, like improving the quality and longevity of human memory, or developing medicine to prevent memory loss. In the future, we might even be able to treat memories like we do data on a hard drive. We'll be able to create devices that back them up, or destroy parts of them freely. There's already research going on that front abroad. They managed to erase lab rats' long-term memory by manipulating their M-zeta kinase enzyme.
I see. In fact, I didn't see it all. But for the time being, I had to be agreeable. In any case, I'm just super happy that I can be any help to my beloved Matsuda-kun.
Your brain is empty and so are the words it produces. You really are an empty woman.
I didn't quite understand if he was serious or just making fun of me. But that's just how Matsuda-kun is. He always insisted I should take care of myself. He may be cold to me, and he may be blunt, but he doesn't treat me with fake sympathy. It's depressing when people do, so I'm grateful for his attitude. I may be empty, but I'm still super happy. I raised my voice, refusing to be discouraged, but Matsuda-kun's reply was almost a whisper.
Well, I can't deny you're helping me out here. One doesn't get his hands on such a rare case very often.
Did you say rare? I like the sound of that word. I felt as happy as if I were being praised. So, what's rare about me? Tell me.
Stop acting like a child.
Matsuda-kun let out a big sigh.
I don't want to tell you. You just get annoyingly excited.
What's so wrong with that? Tell me. My insistence finally paid off.
You don't often see someone possessing such a superb, brain-intensive talent as you do affected by memory loss. That's why you're such a rare case.
Talent? Brain-intensive? Nothing came to mind.
It's fine if you don't remember it. It was really irritating when you used it. I'm warning you. Don't ever try to use it on me. You got that, dung beetle?
I didn't quite get what he meant, but his dung beetle comment stung my heart a little bit, so I couldn't help but nod in agreement. Well, I don't really care as long as I get to spend these intimate moments with you, Matsuda-kun. I should be thankful that there's sickness in my brain.
I told you, it's not really a sickness.
Matsuda-kun stuck even more suction cups to my head, as if he was trying to hide my grinning face.
Nevertheless, it's admirable you can take this so easily. Your condition's no laughing matter. Shouldn't you be at least a little worried?
What is there to be worried about?
I mean,
said Matsuda-kun in amazement.
Aren't you worried whether these symptoms are ever going to go away?
His words surprised me. It wasn't like Matsuda-kun at all, asking a question like that in such a serious tone. I'm not worried at all, I laughed, trying to lighten the mood. I mean, the only me I can remember is the me that is lying here on this bed at this very moment. I can't remember anything from before I lost my memory, so it's not like I have anything to compare it to. That's why I don't see my forgetfulness as a disadvantage. It's just a part of who I am.
You don't see it as a disadvantage. But aren't you even worried about how this memory loss started or when it's going to end?
Not at all. In fact, I'm much more worried that if I suddenly get cured, I wouldn't get to see you anymore, Matsuda-kun. The room suddenly turned quiet. After the silence continued for a while, Matsuda-kun broke it with a whisper.
You don't have to worry,
he said, his voice suddenly dark.
I won't let this treatment end.
I looked up. The face peeking through his pitch-black hair was stiff, lost in thought. Matsuda-kun? As soon as I called him, he straightened up and turned back to me.
No, it's nothing.
He shook his head, as if trying to smooth things over. Then he returned to the machine and continued working on it as if nothing happened.
Well, nothing good could come out of being too pessimistic about your symptoms. That's one case where your natural cheerfulness is actually helpful.
Yep, my thinking's very flexible after all.
Your head's flexible, that's for sure. You can't even remember your friends or family before you lost your memory, and yet you aren't even slightly disconcerted.
But forgetting them is just like I never had them at all. That's why everyone I forget. They really have nothing to do with me anymore.
Those words again.
Matsuda-kun winked for an awfully long time.
If you keep saying things that have nothing to do with you, you're going to end up with nothing left inside.
Oh, I'll be fine. I will always have you, Matsuda-kun. I stuck my chest in pride. You're the only person I can remember, so as long as you're here, I won't get lonely.
You probably link me with the process of coming here to receive this treatment on your procedural memory. That's why you can remember me.
No, that's not it at all,
Yeah, I know.
said Matsuda-kun, trying to calm me down before I became too flustered. He continued attaching suction cups to my face, stopping from time to time to scratch his chest, which I could catch a glimpse of through a gap in his dirty white shirt. Does he really know what I meant? He probably just said that to shut me up. I don't think he even believed me when I said I remembered him. But it's true. I don't remember him in the usual sense of the word remember, of course. But I didn't lie when I said I do. I remember Matsuda-kun. I forget him, and yet I remember. I'm not talking about our conversations, or what we did together. For those kind of memories, I have to rely on my notebook. No, what I remember is something much more special and important. It's not memories, but feelings. Not using my head, but using my heart. What I remember about Matsuda-kun is pure emotion. Every time I see him, I feel the beat of my heart before my head even realizes what's going on. The beat tells me one very important thing. For me, his very existence is precious, one of a kind. That's why, no matter how forgetful I become, I will never forget him. There's a connection deeper than memories between the two of us. For me, Matsuda-kun is special. He's extraordinary. He's a miracle.
Shut up already, will ya?
I came back to my senses, confused. You heard me? I was about to jump out off the bed, but Matsuda-kun pinned my head back down.
You're gonna get the cord disconnected. What are you, human waste?
He said cruelly, as if I tried to disconnect his cord on purpose. But I never said a word. Were you talking about how loud my heartbeat is? I can't help that. If my heart stops, I'd die.
I wasn't talking about you. I was referring to the noise outside.
Outside? Matsuda-kun turned up his chin and pointed to the window. When I listened intently, I could indeed hear an unusual noise coming from outside. Jeering voices, angry voices, hooting voices. Reactionary voices full of anger. The kind of voices that could make the earth rumble. It was an assembly of unpleasant voices that could make your face frown instinctively. What is that?
It's the parade. They're getting louder every day.
A parade? You don't mean that parade?
Liar! You don't remember it at all.
Matsuda-kun pinched my forehead and continued explaining. His face was grim.
It's essentially a demonstration. But the teaching staff, or maybe I should say the old geezers in the steering committee, didn't like the sound of that word, so they decided to call it a stupid name like a parade.
But isn't a parade the exact opposite of a demonstration?
That's exactly why they chose that name.
But why parade?
It's the guys from the preparatory school.
Preparatory school? I've never heard of such a thing, or have I?
You don't remember, of course. Well, your head is oversized, so I guess it can't be helped.
Wait, calling a girl oversized is sexual harassment. If this was the Edo period, you would be beheaded by now. Eep! My head, which was on its way up from the bed, was pushed back down.
Hope's Peak Academy is not a traditional learning facility like other schools. They provide education for the talented, but at the same time they research that talent. The teaching staff aren't simple educators. They're also scientists who research human talent. But scientists are a bothersome bunch. The more they research, the more they want to research even deeper. Therefore, there's something they never have enough of. Do you know what that is?
It's probably...
It's money.
Oh, right. My chance to find the answer on my own was gone. So that's the least I could say.
Up until recently, Hope's Peak Academy was a small-scale facility that could survive on a government subsidiary and graduate donations. Their research was often blocked by a lack of resources, though. But the steering committee was not satisfied with the state of the research, so they instituted the preparatory school system in order to bring in more money.
I nodded enthusiastically to show I was listening.
The gist of it is that us Ultimates are affiliated with the main school. There's now a separate educational facility attached to it called a prep school. That school's located on the west quarter of the campus, while the main school remains here in the east, so we don't actually intermingle much. I heard there's not much that's the same over there. They don't scout their students, and rely on a regular entrance exam to choose among applicants. Their teaching staff is chosen the same way. Our teachers are the scientists who work and live at the school, while they have regular teachers coming from outside.
So, it's just a regular high school, isn't it?
Exactly. Nevertheless, there was a flood of applications. Brand name is a powerful thing. People don't care that it was just a prep school. The prestigious Hope's Peak Academy had finally opened its doors to the public. People are sheep. They're drawn to a name, and the school took advantage of that to get more money. Thanks to that, the school went through a sudden growth spurt. We suddenly have research buildings that can make any university jealous. No one was prepared for that. In just a year or two, Hope's Peak became a school of an entirely different scale. The power of the steering committee also grew accordingly.
But that almost seems like fraud.
Doesn't just seem like one.
Matsuda-kun's mouth twisted in a bitter smile.
Right now, Hope's Peak Academy is set up like a third world country's pyramid class system. The multitude of students in the prep school exist only to support the few ultimates in the main one. It seems they have some kind of bogus system in place for exceptional students to transfer to the main school, but I've never heard of anyone actually succeeding. Our teachers probably don't think any of them deserve it.
That's not how educators should behave.
You're right, but it's exactly how scientists do. They don't care about anything but their research subject. I'm just the same, in fact. It's just that their subject is human talent.
But it's so unfair. I puffed my cheeks.
Of course it is. If it wasn't, there wouldn't be any need for a demonstration, would there? But still.
Matsuda-kun suddenly cut his speech short. His tone of voice changed to a cautious one.
I don't think they could have set this all up on their own. This has to be the result of someone else's scheme. That's how I feel.
Matsuda-kun narrowed his eyes and looked outside the window. His look was so grim that I hesitated to speak.
Hey, Ugly.
After a short while, he turned back to me, as if remembering something.
Write this conversation down properly in your notebook. Don't brush it off as having nothing to do with you. Those prep school students don't think much of us. I don't think they're going to attack you or anything, but it's better to be cautious.
Okay, I understand. As I replied, I noticed the suction cups stuck to my head and my face were making it difficult to move my mouth.
I need you to stay still for a while. I don't mind if you sleep.
Matsuda-kun stepped away from my line of sight. But I'm not sleepy at all, I replied in an insecure voice. Matsuda-kun's voice answered from the other side of the room.
I can give you sleeping pills. 12 would probably be enough.
Isn't that a lethal dose? Are you sure it's all right? As soon as my uneasiness grew even deeper, Matsuda-kun appeared in front of me again. He was now wearing a school jacket on top of his dirty shirt.
If something happens to my machines while I'm gone, you're dead.
Are you going somewhere?
I have a little business to take care of. Anyway, if something happens to my machines, you're dead.
He was serious enough to repeat the warning twice. I wouldn't mind being killed if it's you who kills me.
It'd be troublesome for me. I hate gore.
I didn't think that was such a good quality for someone who studies the human brain, but I didn't say anything. In that case, if I stay here and wait like a good girl, let's go see a movie together later.
A movie?
Like that one? I flipped through the pages of my notebook, searching for memories about movies. Here's one. It's about 2 robbers, Harry and Marv, sneaking into the McAllister household.
Are you talking about Home Alone? Seems you've forgotten, but you bugged me to see it with you before, and we did.
Really? In that case, I continued flipping through the notebook. but couldn't find mention of any other movies. It seems I was particularly interested in that movie. I could blame myself all day, but it'd get me nowhere. Well, it's a masterpiece, so I'm sure it's still interesting even if you watch it again.
It's certainly not a bad movie, but it's not the kind of movie I'd want to watch again and again.
So, what kind of movie do you...
Please don't ask me questions fit for the diary of a middle school girl.
I felt his distasteful stare glaring down at me, but I didn't give up. Let's do it. If you pretend you're watching for the first time, it's going to be fun. I read a little more in my notebook. According to this, I thought that little boy who played the main character, Wakuli Cullen, is super cute. There's a cute boy in this movie. Isn't that exciting?
And why exactly do you think that would excite me? Also, that actor isn't named as if he was a brand of lingerie. It's Macaulay Culkin.
It says here that I thought he was so cute I wanted to adopt him.
You only say that because you don't know how he looks today. He underwent quite a transformation.
A transformation, huh? Matsuda-kun narrowed his almond eyes even more than usual, and swiped his bangs away from his forehead.
Just be a good girl and go to sleep.
It seems he was tired of me trying to postpone his departure. Wait, don't go. Nevertheless, now panicking, I tried to stop him again. I don't want you to go. I'd be lonely. Don't leave me here alone. We haven't seen each other in a long time, have we?
A long time?
Matsuda-kun stopped in his tracks.
Why do you think we haven't seen each other in a long time? I'm asking you, why you think we haven't seen each other in a long time?
Matsuda-kun faced away from me as he spoke. His voice was tinted with pain and made me feel anxious. I can tell by the rate my heart was beating, I think.
So, if you see me every day, your heart doesn't beat as fast when I'm near?
No, that's not it.
We did meet just yesterday, you know.
We did?
It's not surprising you forgot.
Matsuda-kun's back curled forward, as if he was dejected.
I guess you were just lying when you said I'm the only one you can remember.
Wait, I'll remember in a second. In haste, I flipped through the pages of my notebook. I went through them all, from back to back, but I couldn't find any memories of me and Matsuda-kun meeting the day before. It was a complete failure. When I looked away from the notebook, Matsuda-kun was already gone. I've been had. And there was nothing more I could do about it. Sigh. I guess there really is nothing I can do but sleep. Not that that's such a bad thing. At the very least, when I'm asleep, I can lose myself inside my dreams. I can escape this lonely world that doesn't have Matsuda-kun in it. I can probably even meet Matsuda-kun in my dreams. With that thought deep in my heart, I rolled to my side, careful not to disturb the cords all over my head, and sniffed the pillow that still had traces of Matsuda-kun's scent. I sniffed it as if I was a puppy, and rubbed my cheeks against it, purring happily. Then I closed my eyes. As my vision blacked out, my other senses sharpened. Before long, the only thing remaining in my world was Matsuda-kun's scent. No, that wasn't the only thing. I could also hear voices, interfering with my and Matsuda-kun's private world. An assembly of emotional, unsettling voices. Anxiety washed over my entire body just by listening to them. So I blocked my ears in panic. It has nothing to do with me after all. Nevertheless, I couldn't sleep. I felt like my body forgot how to. I want to fall asleep. I want to sleep and tide over this world that doesn't have Matsuda-kun in it. I want to meet him again. Matsuda-kun. 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 And then, as I dreamed about dreaming about Matsuda-kun, I slowly fell into a blissful sleep.
Chapter 4. A short while after leaving the laboratory, Yasuke Matsuda stood in front of a large door that exuded a solemn atmosphere and straightened his posture. What are you so nervous about? He wanted to mock himself, but at the same time realized nervousness was inevitable. It was the first time he'd ever stepped into Hope's Peak Academy's inner sanctum, the staff building. It was the only building on the campus's east quarter that students were forbidden to enter, And sure enough, once he did, he ended up having to explain the situation to several teachers who stopped him along the way. That wasn't enough though. His final destination was itself a special place, even inside this forbidden building. Yasuke Matsuda raised his head and stared at the door in front of him. It was a pretentiously decorated wooden door that gave him the feeling visitors weren't welcome. The metal plate set in it read, Hope's Peak Academy Steering Committee Meeting Room. This was the inner sanctum's inner sanctum. Even the teaching staff couldn't just walk in uninvited. Nervousness really was inevitable for someone about to enter such a special room. But, nevertheless, this really isn't like me. Matsuda cleared his throat. He tried to cheer himself up before he ended up swallowed whole by the oppressing atmosphere. Then he raised his fist and knocked twice on the door. This is Yasuke Matsuda from Hope's Peak Academy 77th class, he announced, slowly pushing the heavy door open. Excuse me. The room was as different from a classroom as a room could be. The ceiling, pillars and walls were excessively decorated, in a way that Matsuda found gloomy. He stepped forward, the sound of his footsteps swallowed by the thick carpet. We apologize for calling you here on such a short notice. The voice was surprisingly light and cheerful. It belonged to Hope's Peak Academy's headmaster, Jin Kirigiri. Every time Matsuda saw the man, he couldn't help but be astounded by how young he was. In his mind, a headmaster was a middle-aged man with white hair, a moustache and a drab suit. Kirigiri, still in his 30s, was just too young for the job. Please sit down. It would be easier to have a conversation that way. A large circular table stood in the middle of the room. Antique chairs were lined up all around it. Excuse me, said Matsuda as he sat on the nearest chair, placing him exactly across the table from Kirigiri. The moment he sat down, he felt several pairs of eyes staring intently at him. They belonged to 4 old men who sat around the table at set intervals. Every one of them wore a pitch-black suit, as if they were on their way back from a funeral. Their ties were the same colour. Their appraising glare felt to Matsuda as if someone was breathing their hot breath down the back of his neck. Do you know who we are? The voice was rusty, and Matsuda couldn't tell which old man it belonged to. You must be the members of Hope's Peak Academy Steering Committee. You have our sincere gratitude for all your help with that incident. I don't know what you're talking about. The wrinkles on the old men's face deepened. They didn't like dodging around the topic of the conversation. There's no need to be cautious here. We know everything, one of the old men said. You helped us with the interrogation of the student who first discovered the crime scene, didn't you? Said another. The student who first discovered the scene. The second Matsuda heard those words, his heart began to beat faster. He tried to hide it by asking a question of his own. You intend to try and get more information out of that student? Not at all. A different old man shook his head. This time we're dealing with a different student. We have a problem, you see. A problem that someone with your skills can solve. We are looking forward for your help. He talked as if the matter was already settled. That was worrying. What if I refuse? A few seconds of silence later, one of the old men started to laugh. It was a quiet laugh at first, but soon the second, third, and then the 4th old man joined, filling the room with scornful laughter. Their voices descended on Matsuda from every angle. So, Matsuda-kun, the laughter suddenly stopped. Do you really believe you have a choice in the matter? The old man spoke in a condescending tone of voice. That girl you've been treating. It seems she's on temporary leave from the school, yet there aren't any signs that she's going to be cured. This time, it was Matsuda's wrinkles that deepened as he frowned. What are you trying to say? You are also still a student. We can't have you wasting your time on a dunce with no hope of recovery. His words were overflowing with contempt. The way we see it, we can't keep extending a student's temporary leave when we don't even know when she'll be able to return. This faculty's purpose is to nurture talent. Those who are too much of a failure to use it should simply step down for the other students' sake. That said, if you agree to help us... Shut the fuck up, old man. Ugh, your dirty mouth talks too much. The room's atmosphere changed in a second. The air pressure jumped all at once. You bastard! Matsuda stood up and the old men froze. He looked at them as if they were worms. No, his stare was much more angry and full of contempt. He looked at them as if they were worms he was about to trample. Dunce! Failure, I should have warned you. I am the only one who's allowed to make fun of her. No one else has any right to. Right, who do you think you're I told you to shut up! His tone really did shut them up. He continued speaking in a low voice. That girl, even when people make fun of her, she swipes it off because she thinks it has nothing to do with her. That's why I have to speak up for her. I won't be able to live with myself if I don't. To the ears of the steering committee members, his words carried an indescribable sense of intimidation. How can we be so overpowered by someone not yet in his 20s? They didn't know the answer. They didn't understand the power someone who possessed talent had. The power Hope's Peak Academy called Hope. May I interrupt? A slow voice forced its way into the conversation. It was Kirigiri's voice. Matsuda turned his coercive stare towards him. It's not that I think it's time for me to say something. Kirigiri smiled bitterly and scratched his head. Despite the nervous atmosphere that filled the room, he seemed completely calm. Matsuda, having lost his momentum, closed his eyes slowly, let out a heavy sigh and sat back down. As soon as he was done, Kirigiri continued in a quiet tone. Matsuda-kun, we're merely asking for a favour. Not a favour just for us. You can consider it a favour to every student of Hope's Peak Academy. Would you please at least consider listening to what we have to say? Matsuda stayed quiet and looked at Kirigiri, unable to judge what the man's true intentions were. Kirigiri, on his part, tried his best to take back control of the situation. I won't ask you to do anything other than listen. If you decide to refuse, we'll accept your decision. With the preliminaries done, he moved straight to the topic at hand. I probably don't have to explain to you about that incident. We should probably still begin there anyway. Kirigiri cleared his throat, clapped both his hands in front of himself and continued. It's been a month and we still can't believe what's happened. Such a gruesome incident taking place inside Hope's Peak Academy. I still feel like we're living in a nightmare. But it really did happen, yelled one of the old men. 13 kids, screamed another. 13 victims, and the details of what happened are still unclear. Why did such a terrible thing happen in our school? When the screaming voices stopped, Matsuda said what's been on his mind. So, you never informed the police? Of course we didn't. What do you think would happen if we did? What would we solve? This is not a problem that can be taken care of by arresting a culprit. But what about the victims' families? We're taking care of that, yet another old man yelled without skipping a beat. You don't have to worry about such things. Judging by the way he spoke, the Academy had already taken measures for dealing with the families. They must have asked some favours from previous graduates. Many of them rose to high positions on the strength of the Hope's Peak brand. If that brand falls from grace, they'll also lose it all. You're right. I shouldn't have to worry about that. So what is it that you want me to do? This other student you were talking about. They must have something to do with this incident as well, right? We want you to extract information out of that student that will help in clarifying the truth behind the incident, answered Kirigiri. Clarify the truth? Isn't that a contradiction? Did you decide to cover up the incident? The cover-up. Matsuda was the only student the faculty trusted with the secret. In exchange for his cooperation, he was awarded a large research grant and equipment for his lab. That was probably another proof that he was a true scientist. But that wasn't the only reason he agreed to cooperate. No one but Matsuda himself knew the other reasons. Yes, it does sound like a contradiction, doesn't it? Answered Kirigiri after a short hesitation. But this is a necessity. We strongly believe that hiding this incident is necessary, but there's too much we still don't know about. We can't hide something we don't completely understand. That's why we think we must find the entire story regarding what happened back then. In order to protect Hope's Peak Academy, this cover-up has to be perfect. Kirigiri said all that without the slightest sign of doubt. He'd do anything to protect Hope's Peak. He's just like me, isn't he? Matsuda thought. Sacrificing something to protect something else. That's exactly what I'm also doing right now. So, who's the student you want me to interrogate? Kirigiri licked his lips and gave Matsuda a cautious answer. We didn't tell you this before, but other than the first discoverer of the crime scene, there are 2 additional survivors. 2 survivors. Sure enough, that was the first time Matsuda heard about them. They are indispensable for discovering the truth about the incident, of course. Had all been well, we should have questioned them immediately after we were done with the crime scene's discoverer. But because of certain circumstances, we couldn't do that. Circumstances? One of them's been in a coma since the incident. The other, thankfully, came out unhurt, but went missing soon after. We don't know where that student is right now. 1 comatose student and 1 missing. The circumstances were indeed severe, but there was still a possibility. You want me to try and get information from the comatose student, don't you? Exactly! Finding the truth in order to hide it, it was certainly a twisted thing to do, but it was also very convenient for Matsuda. This is probably my chance. My chance to protect her. I understand, he said. He had no other choice. I'll see what I can do. Do you think you could do something? One of the old men quickly relaxed and tried to regain authority. It's still too early to tell. It depends on the student's exact condition. I'll try my best in any case, Matsuda answered bluntly and returned to face Kirigiri. But what about the missing student? You aren't going to just sit here doing nothing about that, are you? After a short silence, Kirigiri bent forward and looked straight into Matsuda's eyes. Is something worrying you? His gaze was sharp, and Matsuda felt as if he could read his innermost thoughts. Wanting to escape it, he retracted quickly. No, I was just curious. His voice was shaky, and he continued in an effort to hide it. I mean, a missing student's far too suspicious, isn't it? Don't you think they could be the culprit who killed 13 students and left 1 in a coma? The old men immediately started rustling. Their whispers reverberating through the meeting room. Kirigiri alone kept his cool. It's just as you say. The way things look, that student is extremely suspicious. In that case what? Kirigiri interrupted forcefully. It just justifies covering up this incident even more. If we don't, it's going to be the end of this school. The end of the school? Matsuda was intrigued by Kirigiri's expression. Does that mean that the student who's gone missing is someone special? A certain name suddenly found itself floating in the back of Matsuda's mind. He'd heard that name only in rumours and in occult stories he always thought were urban legends. But if that person really exists, they may very well be involved in this incident. If that's the case, it all makes sense. It even makes sense calling this incident the worst incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history. It makes sense, but it's also terrible. A single drop of sweat fell down from Matsuda's temple as he whispered those words deep inside his heart. Chapter 5.
Yeah! Ah! I jumped to my feet at the sudden pain of my skin being pulled violently and saw a boy standing at my bedside with a jumble of cords attached to suction cups in his hands. My heart started beating fast. Ah! It's Matsuda-kun, isn't it? Isn't it? Not wasting a second, I leaped straight into him. But just like a matador, he nimbly stepped aside. My head crashed into the wall as if I was the coyote, tricked by the roadrunner. I could see stars spinning around my head. Ugh, why are you avoiding me?
Because you have a swollen face.
You can't go calling a girl's face swollen. I turned my shaky feet and peeked into a mirror I found on top of the one desk. My face was packed with violet blue specks, the size of small coins, swollen, sure enough. But, that's because you pulled those suction cups off my face so violently, Matsuda-kun.
I was in a hurry.
Oh? I wouldn't mind if you go right here.
I'm not in a hurry because I have to use the toilet.
Of course. How silly of me. Matsuda-kun never has to use the toilet after all.
What do you even think I am, ugly?
You're the most sublime being in human history, of course.
Don't include me in your ridiculous delusions.
Matsuda-kun exhaled a big breath, as if giving up.
I've had enough. If I keep talking to you, I'd go weird in the head, too.
He started tidying up the trolley.
Anyway, I have more business to attend to today. Go home. Quickly now.
But why? Naturally, I strongly objected to this proposition. I don't wanna. I'd be lonely.
Honestly, you're such an annoying girl.
Matsuda-kun narrowed his eyes and slowly stepped in front of my face. He grasped both of my shoulders tenderly.
Close your eyes. Just do it. Close them.
As my heart beat rhythmically, at Matsuda-kun drawing near before my eyes, I did as I was told and closed them. My entire body became hot. I felt as if I was about to melt. The blood vessels behind my ears pulsed violently. The situation could only mean one thing, right? It's a terrible cliché, but what else could it be? It is, isn't it? It is! Then, as the anticipation made my heart go boom, 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 I felt Matsuda-kun moving behind me. Before I could even wonder what was going on, he started pushing me forward. In a second, I was thrown out into the corridor. Ow! I collapsed on the corridor's floor from the excessive force of Matsuda-kun's shove. It was a small mercy that I had clean underpants on.
The next treatment is in 3 days. Be a good girl and stay in your room. Don't go out on needless walks,
said Matsuda-kun before I could even get up, and then shut the door loudly behind him. Oh, he tricked me. My shoulders drooped. But since there was nothing I could do, I simply left the neurology lab, crestfallen. As I exited the biology building, the first thing I did was check my notebook. I had to go back to the dorms, but since I forgot where they were, I flipped through the pages of Ryoko Otonashi's memory notebook as I walked. Eventually, I found the school map. It seemed I drew them all by myself. I guess this is a good time to do a full-scale review of my notes and explain the full picture regarding Hope's Peak Academy. Here we go. According to my map, Hope's Peak Academy's campus is shaped like a large diamond. It's divided into 4 quarters: east, west, south, and north, each the size of a full-scale regular high school. The east quarter, through which I walked now, was the heart of the academy, where the buildings and facilities used by the main school are located. Many of its buildings were still under construction, but there were also several magnificent, envy-inducing research buildings for various fields, much like Matsuda-kun's biology building. In addition, it seems this quarter is also home to the staff building, which students are forbidden to enter. Then there's the west quarter. It seems the buildings and facilities for the preparatory school are located there, but I don't think I ever visited it. Unfortunately, there isn't much written in my notebook about it. The south quarter is where Hope's Peak Academy's student dormitories are. In addition, it seems there's a convenience store, a bookstore, and various other shops where necessary supplies can be bought. By the way, it seems only students belonging to the main school are allowed to live in the dorms, and that it's a special perk that doesn't even cost money. Then there's the north quarter, which is apparently currently vacant. The only thing left there is an old school building, which was still in use until just recently. For the time being, it seems it's been left neglected, so naturally entrance is forbidden. In other words, there isn't much to say about it. Finally, at the very center of the campus, surrounded by the 4 quarters, is the Central Plaza, a large park-like space overgrown with trees. It's often used as a relaxation area for the students, but it appears entry is forbidden between 10 at night and 7 in the morning. Well, I don't plan on walking around in the middle of the night. so it seems that it has nothing to do with me. And so, thanks to the information-packed hand-drawn map, I managed to make my way to the dorm safely. Then, ignoring the greetings of the students who passed by me in the corridor, I went straight to my room. When I entered the room, I was met with stickers reading, "This is my room," stuck all around. Yep, this is the right place. There's no question about it. And confirming this important fact, I stood near the doorway for a while staring into space. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't think of anything I wanted to do. So eventually, I simply collapsed into my bed. Nevertheless, it seems I already took a midday nap somewhere because I couldn't fall asleep. Reluctantly, I decided to kill some time. For me, killing time means exactly one thing. I took out Ryoko Otonashi's memory notebook and, still lying on the bed, started flipping through its pages. Everything that's written down in this notebook is the undeniable truth, but I can't remember any of it. In other words, it feels like I'm reading a non-fiction book about myself. The excitement of experiencing my own past vicariously is an amazing form of entertainment that only someone as forgetful as myself can enjoy. I read about what I talked with Matsuda-kun about, and what he said to me. Most of the notebook was about Matsuda-kun, but that's exactly what makes it so much fun. Then, as I continued flipping through the notebook, my eyes stopped on one single page. That page was packed with sketches of a boy's face. My heartbeat wasn't as fast as it could be, but increased slightly in speed. These are probably portraits of Matsuda-kun, but since my heart isn't beating that fast, they're probably not very good likeness. Maybe I should try to make some amendments? I think that nose is all wrong. No, maybe it's the eyes? I can't really remember what Matsuda-kun's face looked like, but I used my heartbeat as a measure and carefully took to redrawing the sketches. That's probably how bomb disposal personnel feel when they go searching for landmines. No, I guess it's a little different. And so, after messing with the portrait for a little bit, I felt my heart beating a little faster than it did before. I did it. I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. If I just continue fiddling with the sketch little by little, I'm sure it will eventually look just like the real Matsuda-kun. I probably did the exact same thing before. I just don't remember it. It's just that working on this sketch requires every bit of my concentration, and I can't keep it up for very long. Tired, I placed the notebook next to my pillow and turned to lie face up. Then I started to whisper, "I want to meet Matsuda-kun. I want to meet Matsuda-kun. I want to meet Matsuda-kun." It was the only thing I could do. Right now, the only thing I can do is whisper deep inside my heart how much I want to meet Matsuda-kun. There's nothing else I can think about. Nothing else I can do. Nothing else I should do. I can't remember anything else, after all. Not even my family or my other classmates. For me, the people living in the outside world and what they do feels just like watching a boring stage play from the sidelines. I can't treat them as real beings. I don't even feel I live in the same world they do. Noisy classrooms, sweat-drenched PE lessons, festive lunch times, stopping to grab a bite after club activities, sitting on the ground chatting with friends, embarrassing conversations with the family. I can't even feel envy or regret that I'm missing these things out. They simply have nothing to do with me, and that's it. But the only existence keeping me from being entirely cut off from the world is Matsuda-kun. And that's why I can't stop thinking of anything else but him. I don't stop for a second to think about any other thing. I want to meet Matsuda-kun. I want to meet Matsuda-kun. I want to meet... Thump. There was a strange sound, and I came back to my senses. I raised myself from the bed and found a letter shoved under the room's door. It's from Matsuda-kun. It was the logical conclusion to make, and so I jumped to grab the envelope and hurried to read the letter inside.
Dear Miss Ultimate Pitiful Forgetful Girl, I've taken all the precious past memories you've so meticulously chronicled. There's a lot of them, and they all chronicle your past with Yasuke Matsuda. That's the entire weight of your past right there, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it? By the way, if you think I am lying, just look under your bed. That's where you stored all your memories, but there isn't even a single one left. That's because I took them all. Well then, let's get to the main issue. If you want your memories back, come to the fountain in the Central Plaza tonight at 1 a.m. Come alone, of course. It's not like you even have anyone to call, is it? That's fine then. That's all. Thank you for your cooperation. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
My body stiffened as I finished reading the letter. It stiffened, and yet it also quivered like a plate of jelly. In other words, I was so disturbed that the previous smile seemed appropriate. A threat? What's going on? I don't get it. But this problem couldn't be solved with a few questioning lines. First, I have to check under the bed, like the letter said. When I hastily did so, there was nothing there. To tell you the truth, I don't even remember ever storing old notebooks under there. But if I really did, and all of my past memories of Matsuda-kun were stolen, it's terrible. It means all I have left is the current notebook I hold in my hands. That's all I have left. Just one measly notebook? That's what's more than 15 years of memories amount to? Suddenly, a strange feeling descended upon me. Is that what they call the feeling of loss? Until now, that kind of feeling was unfamiliar to the forgetful me. I'm sure people who learn to live with a small wound have to always endure a certain amount of pain. But that wasn't the case for me. I have no idea how to deal with this new pain I currently felt. For the time being, I was simply angry. Whose idea of a prank is this? My voice was strained and shaky, my fist grasping the letter, crumbling it. What? Why? I let my thoughts be led by anger. Perhaps this is the work of some sleazeball scheming to get between me and Matsuda-kun's love. I think Matsuda-kun is very handsome and looks cool, so many girls must be after him. For such girls, the growing love between us must be an eyesore. So one of them must have succumbed to the desperate measures. She took my memories hostage, and is probably going to do something to me once I answer her call. Oh, she's such a mean woman. My anger reached its boiling point, and was about to erupt like Mount Etna. But it didn't. It appears that I have even forgotten how to be properly angry. But that was just natural. Someone as uninvolved with the world as I am is a stranger to feelings of anger. Therefore, I have no idea how to funnel it. I guess anger that originates in the imagination alone has its limits. In any case, since I couldn't let my anger out, my feelings rapidly cooled down. I guess I'll just do as the letter asks and think about it later. Having completely cooled down, I lay down on the bed and waited for 1 a.m., the appointed time. I read the letter over and over so I wouldn't forget what I was waiting for. And then, as the time approached, but this won't turn into a fight, right? It's going to be okay, isn't it? Harboring these depressing thoughts, I left my room. It was the Central Plaza, right? I walked down the pavement with heavy steps, checking the map in Ryoko Otonashi's memory notebook. The world at night. Everyone was asleep. Tonight, I was the only person walking about. I could sense not a single other human being in the area. I did sense the presence of things which were not human, but I should probably not think too deeply about that. To tell you the truth, the thought of just going back to my room had crossed my mind several times, but leaving my memories stolen did not appeal to me, so my feet reluctantly pushed me forward. After walking for a short while, an iron fence came into view. It was set up to completely block the road I was walking along. According to my notebook, entry to the Central Plaza was forbidden between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., and that's probably why the fence was there. In other words, If I can't overcome this fence, I won't be able to reach my destination. This time, I seriously thought about going back, but at the last moment made a firm resolution and started climbing the fence. A few moments later, I somehow managed to land on the lawn on the other side. I started walking around the central plaza, looking for the fountain I was supposed to go to. The darkness deepened. It was probably because this area was thick with trees. The same trees that were usually brilliantly sparkling green under the light of the sun were now painting the plaza pitch black in the starless night. I walked around in the darkness for a while, until suddenly my field of vision grew wider. In front of me was a small square. In its center stood a lone street lamp, relatively illuminating its surroundings. Near the lamp, I could see the fountain I was looking for. The water coming out of it made a cute, soft, splashing sound. As soon as my consciousness understood, I have reached my destination, my nervousness increased. I stepped slowly towards the fountain with excessive caution, but after just a few steps, I stopped in my tracks. I could see someone standing on the other side of the fountain. I could only see the upper half of their body peeking from the shadows of the trees, but it was pretty clear I was looking at a man's back. Excuse me. I boldly raised my voice, but there was no answer. I guess I should go just a little bit closer. Leaves rustled under my feet. Nevertheless, the man didn't make any sign he had noticed the noise. I continued stepping forward and raised my voice again. Was it you who called me here? Once again, there was no answer. He couldn't possibly not have heard me. My body became heavy. A growing sense of dread pushed down on both of my shoulders. In no time, my tightly fisted hands were covered in sweat. Nevertheless, the lure of mystery pushed me forward, and the contours of the faint figure in front of me gradually became clear. I saw a man wearing a suit. His hair was white, and his neck covered with countless deep wrinkles. Suddenly, a gust of wind came blowing by. Sway, 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 sway. The man's figure swayed feebly in the wind. I felt cold shivers all over my body. They felt as if someone touched the back of my neck with an icy hand. I faintly heard a different part of me yelling at me to stop inside my brain. But my feet moved on their own accord as I approached the man and looked at his face. Our eyes met. My eyes met the bloodshot red eyeballs bulging out of a man's wide-open eyes. His face was pale, and the dark blood vessels on it made an eerie pattern. A tongue that looked like a rotting sea slug hanging out from his mouth, reaching the nape of his neck. He was not standing on the ground. He was hanging from a rope around his neck. That rope was now swaying slowly in the wind. It was a sight that, just by witnessing it, could snatch every bit of heat from your body. But this is not the time to write flowery descriptions in my notebook. I should run away. This has nothing to do with me. Drip, drip. Instead, my eyes dropped to the source of the strange sound. Drops fell from the man's tiptoes and gathered in a small puddle under him. For some reason, there was a notebook lying in the puddle. The moment I saw it, I felt an intense electric currents running through my brain. On the notebook's front cover, in blurry yet clear letters, was written, Ryoko Otonashi's memory notebook.
Lying